I'd always dreamed of escaping the noise, the city, the traffic, the constant hum of people. The thought of waking up to nothing but rustling leaves and crisp mountain air seemed perfect. No alarm clocks, no sirens, just the sound of wind moving through pine branches. After weeks of thinking about it, I finally committed. I planned a solo camping trip to the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York. Early June felt like the sweet spot. Not too cold, fewer bugs, and most importantly, not yet swarming with summer tourists. I spent a week preparing. I stopped by an outdoor gear store in Albany, where I lived at the time, and picked up a new sleeping bag rated for chilly nights. My old tent had holes and frayed seams, so I replaced it with a compact model designed for backpackers. I made sure I had more than enough food, freeze-dried meals, protein bars, trail mix, and packed a water filter just in case. By Thursday night, everything was ready. I loaded up my old Honda Accord and told myself I'd head out before sunrise the next day. And I did. Friday morning came bright and clear. The sky was painted in blues and golds as I hit Interstate 87, passing through signs for Saratoga Springs, Lake George, and eventually the turnoff toward the High Peaks region. With each passing mile, I felt the weight of the world fall off my shoulders. About 2.5 hours later, I reached the trailhead near the Mount Marcy area. A wooden sign read Adara High Peaks Wilderness. There were maybe 4 or 5 other cars parked nearby. Not too crowded, not completely empty. It was perfect. I hoisted my pack, double-checked my gear, and started down the trail. My plan was to hike a lesser-used path off the main trail that would take me toward a creek where I could camp undisturbed. The sun filtered through tall pines. Birds called in the distance. The air smelled like wet moss and tree bark. It was exactly what I'd hoped for. After a couple hours of hiking, I found the perfect clearing. Flat, soft earth, close to a small, winding creek, and just far enough off-trail to feel hidden. I dropped my pack, stretched my back, and set up my tent. Then I gathered firewood, careful to follow park rules and only collect dead, fallen branches, and built a small ring of rocks for a safe fire. By late afternoon, long shadows had crept across the forest floor. I heated up a freeze-dried pasta meal and sat by the fire as the light began to fade behind the trees. The quiet was deeper than I expected. No traffic, no voices, just the crackle of fire and the occasional hoot of an owl. As darkness settled in, the forest took on a different tone, less peaceful, more watchful. Still, I reminded myself this was what I wanted. Adventure, solitude, escape. I lay on my back inside the tent, watching stars through a gap in the canopy above me. Then I heard it, a soft rustling sound, not the wind, not a breeze. Something moving through the underbrush. I sat up, grabbed my flashlight, and scanned the trees. Nothing, just layers of shadow and the occasional shimmer of leaves. I told myself it was a raccoon or a deer, common animals, harmless. But the sound didn't fade. It grew louder, slower, almost deliberate. Each step sounded like someone placing their feet carefully, trying not to break a twig. My stomach turned. That wasn't a raccoon. That was a person. Hello. I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer, but the footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. I felt completely exposed, like I was being watched. I grabbed the hatchet I'd packed for firewood, unzipped the tent, and stepped into the cold night air. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I pointed it into the trees. At first, nothing, just black shapes and branches. Then movement. I saw it. A tall figure, human, standing just beyond the tree line. I couldn't see a face. No details. Just the clear outline of someone watching me. "What do you want?" I shouted, voice shaking. The figure didn't speak, didn't move. Then, slowly, it took a step forward. Then another. I dropped the flashlight, and I ran. Branches slapped my arms and scratched my face as I bolted through the woods in total panic. No idea where I was going, just away. After what felt like forever, I saw something. Lights. A small cabin stood at the edge of a clearing, soft yellow glow spilling from its windows. I ran up and pounded on the door, nearly out of breath. "Please, help. Someone's out here." The door opened, An older man in a flannel shirt and worn jeans looked at me with wide eyes. Without a word, he pulled me inside and bolted the door shut. "What the hell's going on?" he asked, his voice gruff but calm. "There's someone out there," I said, gasping. "I don't know who they are. They were just standing near my tent watching me." He turned off the cabin lights and looked through the window. "I don't see anyone," he muttered, "but we'll keep the door locked." I noticed a hunting rifle leaned in the corner. He must have seen me glance at it. "You hurt?" he asked. I shook my head. My ankle throbbed from tripping, but I didn't care. He brought me a glass of water. I nearly spilled it trying to drink. He let me crash on a faded couch, and I did my best to sleep, though it came in pieces, haunted by the image of that figure. When dawn came, he offered to walk me back to my site. I agreed, reluctantly. The hike was quiet, peaceful even. Bird song filled the trees. We reached my camp. Nothing was disturbed. No footprints. No signs anyone had been there. Just my dropped flashlight and gear scattered where I'd left it. Still, the feeling, that terrible feeling from the night before, it clung to me like smoke. I packed up quickly, thanked the old man. He just nodded. "You be careful," he said quietly. "Not everyone you meet out here is friendly." The walk back to the trailhead felt longer. Every branch snap made me flinch. Every breeze made me look behind me. But I never saw the figure again. When I reached my car, I practically dove into the driver's seat. I locked the doors, hard, and started the engine with shaking hands. Next time I go camping, I'm bringing a friend. Or maybe I'll stick to state campgrounds with ranger stations and floodlights. The wild is beautiful, but it's also big and dark and not always empty. My name is Nathan Reyes, and I work the overnight shift at a small, weathered hotel called the Moonlight Inn. It's tucked away just off Highway 17, right on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. During the day, it's an easy place to overlook, the kind of motel you pass by without a second thought. A faded neon sign hums weakly above the entrance. Half the letters flicker or stay dark. The building itself is 2 stories of old brick and warped siding, paint peeling like dry skin. The parking lot is rarely full. There's a strange, persistent emptiness about it. But when night falls, and especially during a thunderstorm, this place feels like something out of a forgotten story. That night, I clocked in at 10 p.m., sharp as I always do. Thick clouds had already started rolling in, and the local forecast warned of a severe coastal storm. The evening staff looked more relieved than usual to hand over the shift. They gave me a brief rundown of the guest list. Only 3 rooms occupied that night, and then hurried out the door, hoping to beat the worst of the weather. After checking the daily log and making some quick notes, I settled into the tall, creaky stool behind the front desk. I scanned the security monitors, listened for the phone, and tried my best to stay awake. By 11 o'clock, the storm had arrived in full force. Wind slammed against the eaves. The rain pelted the windows so hard it almost sounded like someone knocking. From behind the old scarred wooden desk, I could see the lightning flashing across puddles in the lot. Every time the sky cracked open, the lights inside hummed with electricity. A low rumble of thunder would follow moments later, shaking the air itself. The overnight shift is strange like that. It's mostly boredom, but the kind of boredom that lets your mind wander, that makes you feel like something's just barely out of place. That night felt different, like the storm had supercharged the air. Every little sound stuck out. Every tick of the wall clock seemed louder. The potted fern near the entrance trembled with each gust that slipped through the cracked doorframe. Somewhere near midnight, I heard the front entrance rattle. I froze. The glass door creaked open, pushed by the wind, and in stepped a man. He was completely soaked. Water dripped from the brim of his wide, black hat and slid down the shoulders of his long, dark overcoat, forming a growing puddle beneath his boots. The lobby light above him flickered for a moment, probably a surge from the storm, but made it harder to see his face clearly. Even so, his eyes locked onto mine, sharp and intense. Too focused. "Good evening," I said, forcing a polite smile. "Welcome to the Moonlight Inn. How can I help you tonight?" "Need a room," he replied. His voice was rough and low, like he hadn't spoken in hours, or maybe had a cough he wasn't dealing with. He placed a soaked leather wallet on the counter with a strangely stiff motion, too mechanical to feel natural. "All right," I answered, keeping my voice steady. "Let me check what we've got available." I pulled up our booking system. Unsurprisingly, there were plenty of vacancies. "We've got a room open on the ground floor, room 14. It's recently renovated." I lied, though the threadbare carpet and chipped wallpaper would say otherwise. Without a word, he slid a driver's license across the counter. The name on it read, Daniel Mercer. His address was listed in Columbia, about 2 hours northwest of here. Nothing immediately alarming about it, but something about him felt wrong. I typed his info into the system, hands trembling slightly. "All right, Mr. Mercer," I said, handing him the key card. "Room 14 is just down the left hallway. Checkout is at 11 a.m., but if you need anything during the night, just call or come up here." He gave me a short nod. "Thanks," he muttered, then turned and walked away. The hallway lights buzzed as they swung lightly from the draft. He vanished around the corner almost instantly, but the unease he brought with him, that stayed. I tried to shake it off and get back to my routine, confirming tomorrow's reservations, flipping through wake-up call requests, reading over the maintenance notes. But my brain kept circling back to that name, Daniel Mercer. Where had I heard it before? It buzzed at the edge of memory. The unease kept crawling up my spine, so I pulled out my phone and ran a quick search. Maybe the name had come up in the news recently. The storm outside howled as I scrolled. Then my stomach dropped. An article from the Columbia Register, dated 3 years back. Daniel Mercer still at large. I clicked it. The story described a man wanted for armed robbery and aggravated assault, someone who had vanished after a series of violent incidents across central South Carolina. The photo accompanying the article showed a man with a scar along his left cheekbone, piercing eyes, and a strong, hollow stare. My hands began to shake. I recognized that face. It was him. I picked up the lobby phone and dialed 911, trying to keep my voice level. The dispatcher answered, calm but alert. I explained that a man matching the description of a wanted fugitive had just checked into the Moonlight Inn. I gave the name on the ID, the room number, room 14, and our address. She assured me that officers were en route. I hung up the phone and stared at the security monitor. For cameras, the front desk, rear exit, parking lot, and the hallway. Nothing moved. Room 14's door was closed. The corridor was empty except for the flicker of the old hallway light. Outside, thunder cracked. Rain beat down harder than ever. Minutes passed like hours. Then, flashing red and blue lights cut through the storm. 2 officers came through the front door, soaked but composed. "Where is he?" asked the taller one, his voice sharp. I pointed down the left hallway. Room 14. He checked in maybe 15 minutes ago under the name Daniel Mercer. They exchanged a glance. "Stay here," the taller one instructed. They moved quickly. At the door, the shorter officer knocked. "Mr. Mercer, Charleston Police Department. Open the door." No answer. The taller officer pounded again. "Daniel Mercer, open up now." Silence. Then he motioned for me. I hesitated, heart hammering, but walked down the hallway. "Do you have a master key?" I handed over the spare key card, hands clammy. He slid it through the reader. The light turned green. The door creaked open slowly. One officer raised a flashlight. The room was empty. No luggage, no coat, no suitcase, no damp socks or personal belongings. The bed was untouched, and across from it, the small window stood wide open. The curtain flapped in the wind, and rain had soaked the carpet below. They checked the bathroom, the closet. Nothing. Daniel Mercer was gone. I stood frozen in the doorway. I don't understand," I stammered. "He walked in here. I didn't see him leave. He might have gone out the window," one officer muttered. "If he ran for the woods behind the building, this storm would erase his trail." The other nodded. "We'll check the perimeter, but this weather's going to make it tough." They left to search the grounds. I remained there, in the stillness, staring at the open window and the puddle spreading across the floor. Why check in just to vanish? Had he seen the recognition on my face? Did he plan it from the start? Within 30 minutes, the officers returned, drenched, empty-handed. They gave me a card. Call us if anything else happens, or if he comes back. I nodded, heart still pounding. Once they left, the inn felt suffocatingly quiet. The storm still roared outside, but inside, it was like the building itself held its breath. When morning came, and the rain faded to a drizzle, I told the day clerk everything. We checked the camera feeds. The hallway cam showed Daniel Mercer walking toward room 14, but never returning. The outdoor footage was useless, just a blur of rain and static. To this day, I don't know where he went or why he even came. Sometimes I wonder if he was watching me, seeing how I'd react, testing how fast I'd act. Maybe room 14 was never meant to be a place to sleep, just a place to disappear. I'll never forget that night at the Moonlight Inn. And I'll never forget that name, Daniel Mercer. It still sends a chill down my spine. My name is Gavin Marsh, and I've lived in the suburbs of Detroit my entire life. Growing up, I heard endless stories about the abandoned factories scattered across the city, once proud auto plants now rotting in silence. Some folks said those buildings were haunted. Others whispered about secret government labs buried deep inside. My three closest friends, Logan, Ben, and Maya, and I didn't believe in ghosts or conspiracies. Not really. But we were drawn to the forgotten places left behind. It was a chilly Sunday evening in late October, the kind of night when the sky hangs low and the air smells like burning leaves. We were at Ben's house, surrounded by empty pizza boxes, when Logan tossed out the idea. "Let's check out the old Grantham assembly plant," he said, wiping grease from his fingers. "They say there's a way in through the back fence." Ben and Maya exchanged a look. I felt that usual thrill behind my ribs, equal parts curiosity and unease. We'd all heard of Grantham Assembly. Built in the 1920s, shuttered for decades. It loomed beside the Detroit River, 5 floors of broken windows and rusted bones. Some said urban explorers still sneaked in. Others claimed squatters had made it their home. Despite my nerves, I couldn't resist. None of us could. Around 9 p.m., we piled into Logan's beat-up Honda as a brisk wind rattled the trees outside. We drove down Jefferson Avenue, past boarded-up houses, flickering streetlights, and a few neon-lit gas stations that never seemed to close. Eventually, we turned onto a side road with no name, just cracked pavement swallowed by weeds. There it was, the Grantham plant. Even in the dark, it was massive, a crumbling industrial beast. We parked beneath a crooked street lamp and stepped out, our shoes crunching on scattered glass and metal scraps. A chain-link fence circled the entire property, but at the far corner, the links had sagged open. Logan held it back while the rest of us slipped through. Up close, the factory felt even larger, towering above us like a concrete skeleton. The windows were shattered, most of the walls stained with water damage and graffiti. An enormous rusted letter G still clung to the facade above what had once been the main gate. Wind rushed through the hollow doorways and open corridors. It howled like something lost inside. I pulled my hoodie tight and flicked on my flashlight. We headed for a side entrance. The steel door there had long since been pried open and now hung crooked on its hinges. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. It was colder, stale, the kind of chill that settles into your bones. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight. I could hear the crunch of broken tile and gravel beneath our feet. Logan took the lead, always the boldest of the group. He swept his light across what had once been the main production floor, now a graveyard of rusted conveyor belts and twisted equipment. Massive pillars disappeared into darkness above us. Mildew clung to the walls, and every step echoed too loud. "I heard some people still come here for scrap," Ben muttered. His voice barely carried. Maya, usually our calmest, kept glancing behind her. "Scrappers or not," she whispered, "I don't want to run into anyone. Not in a place like this." Still, we pressed deeper. The corridors were lined with broken lockers, shattered glass, and dangling wires that swayed in the breeze. We passed what must have once been a break room. Its door was ripped off, graffiti covered every surface. One message stood out among the others. "Keep out or else," it said in jagged red spray paint. We paused. I felt my pulse thudding in my throat. But Logan just grinned. "Let's check the second floor," he said. "They used to keep the offices up there." A wide metal staircase led up. The railing wobbled when we touched it, flakes of rust coming off on our hands. Step by step, we climbed, our lights bouncing off peeling walls and exposed beams. At the landing, a sudden gust of wind slammed a door somewhere behind us. The sound cracked through the dark like a gunshot. We froze. "Just the wind," I muttered, though even I didn't quite believe it. Rows of offices stretched down the hallway, each one gutted. Papers littered the floor. Most were too old to read. Some turned to powder beneath our feet. Filing cabinets lay tipped over. One office still had a desk, barely upright, with a broken chair nearby. It looked like whoever had worked there left in a hurry. We entered the corner office last. The windows were mostly intact, offering a grim view of the Detroit River under the dull, orange glow of distant street lamps. Maya poked around the drawers, pulling out nothing but crumpled brochures and rusted paper clips. Then Ben froze. He raised his hand for silence. "Do you hear that?" We stopped breathing. "Hey," Logan called out. "We're not here to mess with you. We're just exploring." We rushed forward, but when we turned the corner, the space was empty. Only broken beams and slabs of concrete. No footprints, no doorways. But someone had been there. We all felt it. Ben's voice trembled. "We need to leave. Now." "No argument here," Maya said, gripping my arm. We retraced our steps, faster now, but still cautious. My flashlight scanned every corner, waiting to see that figure again. Was it someone living there? A scrapper? Or someone worse? We passed the staircase, the break room, the hallway of lockers. Every so often, we stopped, certain we heard a footstep behind us, or something scrape along the walls. But every time we looked, nothing. Finally, we reached the door. Stepping outside, the cold wind felt like a relief. I sucked in air like I'd been holding my breath for hours. We slipped back through the sagging fence and ran to Logan's car. Once the doors were locked, nobody spoke for a moment. Then Maya whispered, "I don't know who that was, but I'm glad they didn't come after us." Ben nodded. "We shouldn't have gone in there. That's someone's shelter, maybe. We don't belong there." Even Logan, usually fearless, didn't argue. He just stared at the dark factory. "We didn't see anything supernatural," he said softly, but still felt wrong. I rubbed my arms, trying to calm the goosebumps. I've never been that scared in my life. As we drove off, the headlights lit up the broken windows one last time. The building loomed like a steel giant, hunched in the dark, and I couldn't help but wonder. And sometimes, that's even more terrifying.